What are some ground rules that people are
Mm-hmm.
gonna even think about or want or need?
Yeah, I think what I hear people or what people ask me a lot was, what about when the other person starts dating? And so a lot of the ground rules have more to do with each ex-spouse as opposed to rules for the kids, because the household stays the same, the rules for the kids of the household. But then we had to talk about, well, if we are dating and we, especially early on, weren't comfortable with the kids being introduced to other adults until it was a serious relationship. And so a lot of nesters put in rules like that, like you can date when you're not in the nest, but in the nest, in the house, no romantic partners come into that space, especially early on. I've heard of some people saying, like, okay, for the first year, no romantic partners come in, and then we'll talk about it after that. And that was what Bill and I did probably close to 2 years after our divorce. I felt that the person I was seeing was important enough to me that I wanted him to meet the kids and wanted the kids to meet him as well. I didn't want him to come live in the house or anything, but I just wanted him to be able to have dinner with them or go see a movie together or something. And so Bill and I had a conversation about that. And then we decided also to speak to the therapist that I was continuing to see to get her input about how to talk to the kids about that. So we did a lot of thinking and talking before bringing new people and or new arrangements into the kids' lives. And I think that kind of slow approach is really for the best for everyone. I'm happy that we did it that way.
I imagine it's this way with traditional divorce too, but there's a lot of dialogue that has to happen here, right? When were you and your ex like hashing all this out? Did you have a regular time where you met, and did you have family meetings? What did you do to bridge these communication gaps that would be there because you're not in the same place at the same time?
Yeah, and that's kind of part of the ground rules too that I suggest people set up, is establishing a regular time for communicating, preferably when the kids aren't there. Bill and I found it helpful at first, especially when we were still hashing out divorce stuff, which can get stressful and contentious, that we actually wouldn't even meet in the home. We'd go to a coffee shop, like a neutral place, while the kids were at school, and have our meetings there. We didn't have to do that forever, but we did it for a few months to just take a break from all the things and just focus on what we needed to talk about related to the kids and the nesting situation and the financial aspects of that. And so we had a weekly meeting set up. We had, this is goofy, but we had the set place on the kitchen counter where we would leave a note for each other, because early on, we really didn't hang out in the house together. He'd walk in and I'd say, bye, kid, hugs to the kids, and walk out. And so we weren't staying together and talking. Over time, it became he would show up and then we'd just talk about what was going on. But it took us a while to get there because divorce is hard. but we had a place where you wrote down, and we had an agenda of what homework stuff's coming up. I don't know what groceries might need to be bought soon. The dog has a vet appointment, whatever kind of household stuff we each needed to know about. And
I guess that's a whole thing.
And again,
your financial things, like who is buying the groceries, who is taking care of the dog. It's interesting because traditionally a lot of logistical stuff falls on women's shoulders. Just moms take it on just by assumption, and men don't question that assumption either. So, but in this situation, I imagine you're examining everything. And so did that shift your roles, or how did that go?
It definitely did, especially at first, because we were really trying to keep very strict boundaries on, if it was Bill's parenting time, I wasn't coming in and helping the kids with homework. It was all on him. And then when it was my turn, if the sink blocked up, I had to call the plumber and deal with it because he was focused on work. It was his time out of the house. And we were very, not mean about it, but we were pretty strict, like, well, it's your time there. You need to figure it out. Over time, we mellowed a lot on that, started going back to the things that I like to do and he likes to do, or he's better at, or I'm better at, which in our case tend to be the more traditional. I like to do laundry and grocery shop. And because I was a freelance writer, I have a much more flexible schedule than he does. So I could do a parent-teacher meeting in the middle of the day if he had, a meeting he couldn't get out of. So even if it was his day with the kids, we became much more flexible and just helping each other out. Whatever was helpful to the kids. But I do think that period of time where we were pretty strict about each needing to know how to do everything was good for both of us to gain some appreciation of what the other person does. And Bill realized, like, with 3 kids, laundry is a big part of your life when you have kids.
It must have been in
And I
some
don't
ways
think
like
he
very
knew that before.
satisfying to be like, that's your job now. Have fun, honey.
Exactly. But eventually we kind of mellowed on that stuff. But I think it was a good experience for both of us, for sure.
It sounds like you guys are co-parenting pretty well and getting along pretty well up until this day. It sounds like he's
Yeah.
a friend now to you.
Yes, for sure. And I say this about nesting, that I feel it actually made us get along better than if we had, as opposed to if we'd done a traditional approach of just dropping the kids off in the driveway or something. That we were forced to interact more with each other. And it was challenging at times, at first, especially. But over time, I think it really brought us to a place of just being better friends and getting back to the things that we like about each other without any of the romantic marriage stuff getting in the way. And I really think that it set a great example for our kids, whether they appreciate it or not, that sometimes you really repair a relationship with somebody, or you can change a situation to make it better for yourself and help the other person. And I think they've seen that with us, whether they recognize it or not.
That's so cool. That's so cool.